My name is Avery Lane. The backyard in Kansas City was alive with birthday music, fairy lights twinkling across the fence, and the irresistible aroma of grilled burgers wafting through the air. Mom, Judith, stood on the patio steps, a glass raised high, her voice cutting through the chatter like she commanded the night. "Some kids make you proud every single day," she announced, her eyes fixed on my brother, Travis. "Others, you just wish you didn't have to see them at all." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Travis flashed a wide grin. Dad remained silent, as he always did. I raised my own glass, returning her smile. "Good news, Mom. Your wish just came true. I'm already gone, living in Charlotte now." The music continued to play, but the atmosphere had palpably changed. Mom's smile faltered, freezing on her face. Travis choked on his beer. I set my glass down, turned, walked inside, and didn't look back. That was the last family party I ever attended. If you've ever had a parent say something that stung deeper than they intended, or perhaps exactly as they intended, drop it in the comments below. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what happened next. I grew up in a red brick house on the outskirts of Kansas City, the kind with a driveway crisscrossed by cracks from countless Midwest winters, and a garage that always smelled of motor oil and worn baseball gloves. Mom ran the place like a scoreboard, meticulously tracking points. Every single point went to Travis. He was the star pitcher for the high school team, the one who always got brand new cleats before the season even started, the one whose games dominated the calendar hanging on the fridge. My 8th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I came home from school expecting something, maybe a cake from the grocery store, the cheap kind, with those plastic balloons stuck on top. The kitchen counter was completely bare except for a note. "Travis has practice. Order pizza if you're hungry." I ended up eating cereal, standing up, milk dripping down onto the linoleum floor. Dad walked in later. He reached out, loosened, and then ruffled my hair without saying a word. That was his version of sorry. Travis's birthdays were completely different. The whole neighborhood seemed to show up. One year, Mom rented a bounce house, and the next, she hired a guy to grill ribs. She would stand at the gate in her sundress, waving people in, telling everyone about how Travis struck out the side in the 7th inning. I would sit on the porch steps, counting cars as they drove by, wondering if anyone even noticed I was there. Mom never bothered to hide it. "Travis is going places," she'd say as she folded his uniforms, the fabric worn soft from being washed too many times. "You need to support him." Support, in her mind, meant giving up my Saturday mornings to sit in the bleachers. It meant handing over my allowance whenever his fundraiser jar came up short. And I did it without complaining. Complaining never got you anywhere in that house. Dad, Harold, worked downtown, crunching numbers and staring at spreadsheets all day long. He would come home exhausted, kick off his shoes by the door, and disappear into the den with the TV. If Mom started raising her voice about Travis needing new gear, he would simply nod and sign the check. If I asked for $20 for a school trip, he'd glance up just long enough to say, "Ask your mother," and that was the end of the conversation. The only person who really saw me was Aunt Eileen, Dad's younger sister. She lived across town in a small apartment above a bakery, the kind where the delicious smell of cinnamon rolls seeped right through the floorboards. She started showing up on random Sundays, pulling into the driveway in her beat-up old Honda, the trunk filled with groceries she didn't even need to buy. Mom would frown, but she always let her in. Eileen would wait until Mom was in the shower or out running errands. Then, she'd slip an envelope into my backpack. $50, sometimes even $100, folded tightly and secured with a rubber band. "For books," she'd whisper, tapping the side of her nose like it was some kind of secret code between us. "Or whatever you need." I used the first one to buy a library card at the community center, the kind that let me check out programming books without having to worry about late fees. One afternoon, Travis had a tournament up in St. Louis. The house completely emptied out, Mom packing coolers, Dad loading bats into the trunk. I stayed behind, claiming a stomach ache. As soon as the minivan was out of sight, Eileen knocked on the back door. She never asked any questions. She just handed me a bus pass and said, "There's a coding club at the tech center. They meet on Thursdays. You should go." And so I went. The room smelled strongly of burnt coffee and dry erase markers. Kids my age were hunched over laptops, their fingers flying across the keys. The instructor, a guy with a ponytail and a faded NASA t-shirt, showed me how to write my first line of code. It printed "Hello Avery" on the screen, and something just clicked inside me, like a door I didn't even know was locked had finally swung open. Mom found out about it months later. I had left a printout on the kitchen table, some stupid assignment about loops and variables. She held it up between two fingers like it might bite her. "This is what you're wasting your time on?" she asked, her voice dripping with disapproval. Travis needed new catcher's gear. The old stuff was all cracked. She crumpled the paper up into a ball and tossed it in the trash. I fished it out after she went to bed, carefully smoothed out the wrinkles, and taped it inside my math notebook. Dad saw the whole thing. He was pouring himself a cup of coffee, the steam rising up between us. Our eyes met for just a fraction of a second. Then, he looked away. He picked up his mug and silently closed the door to the den. That was Harold, always choosing the path of least resistance, the path with the least noise. Aunt Eileen just kept those envelopes coming. She never asked for thank yous. Once, she even drove me to the electronic surplus store on the very edge of town, the one with bins full of dusty circuit boards and tangled wires. I spent $40 on a broken laptop that someone had thrown away. She waited for me in the car, the engine running, and the radio playing softly. When I came out, clutching that broken laptop like it was buried treasure, she just smiled and said, "Build something." And so I did. I set up shop in the basement storage room, which was really just a closet with a bare bulb hanging down and a folding table. I took that laptop apart, screw by screw. The screen was cracked and the battery was completely dead, but the motherboard still lit up when I jumped it to an old power supply. That was the very first machine I ever fixed. I named it nothing. Names felt like promises I couldn't keep. Travis made varsity his junior year. The local newspaper ran a photo of him on the mound, his glove raised high, with Mom beaming in the background. They framed it and hung it up in the hallway, right above the spot where my kindergarten art project used to be. I walked past it every day on my way to the bus stop, my backpack heavy with library books and the latest envelope from Eileen. Mom threw a huge party when Travis signed with a Scout. Streamers, balloons, and a sheet cake that said "Future Pro" in bright blue icing. I ate a corner piece of the cake alone in the kitchen while the living room just roared with laughter and celebration. Aunt Eileen found me there, leaned back against the counter, and slipped another envelope into my pocket. "Keep going," she said. Her voice was calm and steady, like she already knew how the story was going to end. The storage room under the basement stairs became my own personal hideout, a narrow space piled high with holiday boxes and Dad's old golf clubs. I dragged in a card table from the garage, set up a gooseneck lamp I found at a yard sale for $2, and claimed that corner as my own. The bulb buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the concrete walls that smelled of damp cardboard and long-forgotten summers. I started with the library books, thick ones on C++ and Python, their pages dog-eared from being read by too many people. The downtown branch had a section in the back where the air conditioning hummed so loudly that it drowned out all the other noise. I would check out 3 books at a time, stuff them into my backpack, and bike home before Mom even realized that I was gone. Reading code felt like cracking a secret language, each line a puzzle that only made sense if you stared at it long enough. The first real laptop came from the money in Aunt Eileen's envelope. I bought it off a guy on Craigslist who met me in a parking lot behind a gas station. The screen flickered. The keyboard was missing the letter J, but it still booted to a command prompt. I carried it down the stairs like it was contraband, set it down on the table, and spent countless nights prying open the case with a butter knife. Dust coated my fingers as I cleaned the fan, replaced a swollen battery with one I had scavenged from a dead remote control. When it finally hummed to life without crashing, I sat back and just stared at the glowing cursor, my heart pounding harder than it ever had at any of Travis's baseball games upstairs. Mom discovered my little setup one Saturday morning. She had come down to get the Christmas ornaments, flipped on the light, and froze in the doorway. "What is all this junk?" she snapped, kicking a loose power cord across the floor. Extension cables snaked all over the place, all connected to a surge protector I had plugged into the dryer outlet. She picked up a circuit board I had salvaged from an old printer. "This is a disaster, Avery. Travis needs the basement for his weight bench." I didn't argue. I just unplugged everything, coiled up the cables, and waited until she had stomped back upstairs. Then, I moved the table even deeper into the corner, behind a stack of paint cans where the light barely reached. The very next day, I ran to the hardware store during my lunch period, used my cafeteria money, and bought a longer Ethernet cable. I drilled a tiny hole through the floor joist and fed the cable up to the living room router when no one was home. Dial-up was dead. This was my lifeline. The school computers were all locked down, but the library had public terminals with internet access. I would log in after hours, download tutorials on server setup, and burn them to CDs using the lab's ancient burner. Back in the storage room, I installed Linux on the laptop, Ubuntu, because the forum said it was free and forgiving. Errors flashed red across the screen, but I learned to read them like warning labels. Reboot, tweak, repeat. One winter break, Travis was away at a baseball camp down in Florida. The house was quiet for an entire week. I used that time to scavenge even more parts. One of the neighbors tossed out an old desktop tower during bulk trash pickup. I hauled it home under the cover of darkness, the wheels squeaking on the sidewalk. Inside were 2 hard drives, a dusty motherboard, and a power supply that sparked when I tested it. I stripped out everything that still worked, soldered jumper wires with a borrowed iron from shop class, and built a second machine. It ran hot, the fans whining like cicadas, but it stayed online. I connected the 2 computers with a crossover cable and set up a local network. The library books called it a cluster. Nothing fancy, just enough to run the simulations I had coded for fun. One program predicted rain chances, based on barometric data I pulled from a cheap sensor hooked to the window. Another one sorted Travis's batting stats from newspaper clippings I scanned at the coffee shop. It was completely useless to anyone else, but it proved that the setup actually worked. Mom caught me again during spring cleaning. She yanked open the door, her arms full of garbage bags. "You're turning my house into a landfill," she said, eyeing the tower fans and the tangled wires. She grabbed a box of floppy disks and shook it at me. "This is why you'll never amount to anything. Travis is out there training with pros, and you're playing with trash." I waited until she left, then rebuilt everything exactly as it was before. The words Rack Roy echoed in my head, but I pushed them down. That night, I ordered a 3rd hard drive online, used Eileen's latest envelope, and configured RAID for redundancy. The machines talked to each other, now sharing the load and backing up data. I named the network Nothing Invites Questions. By sophomore year, the storage room had a set routine. I would slip downstairs after dinner, put on my headphones to block out the noise from the TV upstairs, and code until the bulb flickered and died. Online forums became my classmates, users with handles like Kernel Panic and ByteMI, who answered questions at 2 in the morning. I contributed fixes, earned reputation points, and learned to debug crashes that froze the entire system. The first real server took shape from 4 discarded towers. I aligned them on a metal shelf I had bolted to the wall, connected with switches bought at a flea market. Cooling came from box fans zip-tied to the frame. It hummed constantly, a low growl that vibrated right through the floor. I hosted a simple website, nothing public, just a page that displayed uptime stats. Seeing 99.9% uptime after a month felt better than any report card I'd ever received. Mom never came downstairs again. She would mutter something about the electric bill, but Dad always paid it without saying a word. The machines just kept growing, one salvaged part at a time, until that corner of the basement looked like a mini data center. I knew every fan curve, every loose screw. It wasn't pretty, but it was all mine. An envelope from UNC Charlotte arrived one fall afternoon, thick cream paper with the university seal embossed in gold. I found it on the kitchen counter, half buried under Travis's scouting letters and Mom's coupon circulars. My name was typed in bold across the front. I slid a butter knife under the flap, my heart racing as I pulled out the acceptance packet. A full-ride scholarship, tuition, room, board, even a stipend for books, all for the computer science program, which was top-ranked in the state. I waited until dinner to bring it up. The table was set with meatloaf and instant mashed potatoes, steam fogging up the windows. Dad sliced his portion methodically. Travis scrolled through his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. Mom passed the gravy boat. I cleared my throat. I got into UNC Charlotte, full scholarship. Silence dropped like a curtain. Travis looked up first, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Dad just kept chewing. Mom set the gravy boat down hard enough to slosh gravy onto the tablecloth. "Charlotte?" she repeated, her voice sharp. "That's clear. Across the country." "No." I pushed the letter across the table towards her. "It's 900 miles, Mom, not the moon. The program starts in January." She didn't even touch the paper. "You're not going. Travis has showcases coming up, college coaches flying in. He needs you here to run errands. Keep the schedule straight." She turned to Dad. Harold, tell her. Dad wiped his mouth with a napkin. It's a long way, he said, his eyes fixed on his plate. That was all he said. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. This is my future, not his support staff. Mom leaned forward, her expression hardening. Your future is helping family. Travis gets drafted, we all benefit. You stay here and take classes at the community college if you're so smart. End of discussion. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. It's not your decision. I grabbed the letter and headed for the stairs. Mom called after me about ingratitude, but I didn't stop. Up in my room, I spread the documents out across the bed. Orientation dates, housing forms, a map of the campus with the engineering building circled in red. I filled out everything online that night, using the family desktop while Travis was in the shower. The acceptance portal blinked green, confirming my enrollment. The next few weeks turned tense and strained. Mom ignored the packed boxes I started stacking in the hallway. She scheduled Travis's physical therapy appointments during my shifts at the grocery store, forcing me to swap with my coworkers. Dad drove me to the DMV for a state ID update without saying a word, but he refused to co-sign the dorm contract. Ask your mother, he said again. Aunt Eileen showed up unannounced one evening, pulling me aside in the garage. I heard, she whispered, pressing a debit card into my hand. $500 loaded for the flight, whatever else you might need. Her eyes were steady and reassuring. You're doing this. I booked the ticket online, Kansas City to Charlotte, one-way, red-eye departure. I printed the boarding pass at the library, folded it small, and tucked it inside my calculus textbook. The night before I left, Mom cornered me in the laundry room. You walk out that door, you're on your own. No coming back for holidays. No money for emergencies. She folded Travis's jerseys with sharp, angry snaps. Think hard. I met her gaze, holding it steady. I have. Departure day dawned gray and cold. I hauled my duffel bag and backpack to the curb at 4 a.m, my breath fogging in the porch light. No one stirred inside the house. I had called a rideshare, $20 from Eileen's card. The driver loaded my bags while I stared up at the dark windows. Headlights suddenly swept across the driveway. Aunt Eileen's old Honda rolled up, its engine rumbling. She climbed out in her coat, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Couldn't let you go alone, she said, hugging me tight. We drove to the airport in silence, the radio playing softly, tuned to classic oldies. She parked at departures and popped the trunk. Text me when you land. Check-in was smooth. Scholarship kids got priority treatment. I waved as I went through security, Eileen standing on the other side of the glass until I disappeared down the concourse. The plane taxied out as the sun rose, painting the runways in shades of pink. I pressed my forehead against the window, watching Kansas City shrink below. Mom texted me once during the flight. Travis has a scout dinner tonight. Don't forget to call. I deleted it without replying. The seatbelt sign dinged off. I pulled out the campus map and traced the route from the airport shuttle to my dorm. 900 miles. A new zip code. My own key. Aunt Eileen's last message buzzed on my phone as we landed. Proud of you, kid. Build something big. I saved it, powered off my phone, and stepped out into the terminal. Charlotte smelled like jet fuel and possibility. The rideshare to campus took 40 minutes. I checked into the dorm, plastic key card in hand, room 312, empty except for 2 beds and a desk by the window. I unpacked the laptop first, the one I had rebuilt a dozen times, plugged it in, and watched the familiar boot screen glow. No more hiding in storage rooms. This was all mine. Orientation started the next morning. I walked across the quad, wearing new sneakers and a scholarship hoodie, zipped up against the southern chill. No one knew my last name here. No one expected me to carry water bottles for tryouts. Just code, classes, and a clean slate. Charlotte arrived without snow that winter. Just gray skies and a damp chill that seeped right through my hoodie during morning lectures. The scholarship stipend covered tuition, but it left me with very little money for food after rent. So I picked up shifts at a diner off campus. Greasy spoons, endless coffee refills, tips in crumpled dollar bills. The manager scheduled me for doubles on weekends, plates clattering from opening to close. My nights belonged to the warehouse on the industrial edge of town. I stocked shelves for a medical supply distributor, scanning barcodes under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. The pay was better, cash under the table for overtime. I would clock in at 10, load boxes of syringes and bandages, until the forklift horns faded around dawn. Sleep came in snatched moments between classes, my head nodding over textbooks in the library cubicles. One Thursday shift ran late. A rush order for ventilators. Hospitals scrambling ahead of flu season. The supervisor barked orders for faster stacking. I operated the electric pallet jack, maneuvering pallets down narrow aisles stacked high with crates. My eyes burned from lack of rest, but the clock showed triple time. I reversed too quickly around a corner, the wheel catching on a loose strap. The jack tipped, causing a tower of boxes to shift towards me. I jumped clear, but my foot slipped on spilled packing peanuts. The pallet crashed down, its metal edge slamming into my ankle. Pain shot up my leg like fire. I hit the concrete floor, breath knocked out of me, alarms blaring from the impact sensor. Workers shouted, "Someone killed the power!" Logan appeared first, a tall guy from my algorithms class who was moonlighting the same shift. He had seen the whole thing from the loading dock. "Don't move," he ordered, kneeling beside me. He yanked off his belt and wrapped it tightly above the swelling, acting as a tourniquet. "Elevate it." He propped my leg on a flattened box and dialed 911 on his flip phone. The warehouse manager hovered nearby, muttering about incident reports. Paramedics arrived within minutes, Charlotte's response times impressively sharp. They splinted my ankle and loaded me onto a stretcher. Logan rode along in the ambulance, holding my backpack. "You're not paying for this," he said when I protested about the bill. "Workers' comp covers it." At the ER, x-rays revealed a clean fracture. No surgery required, just a boot and crutches. The doctor prescribed rest, something I simply couldn't afford. Logan drove me back to the dorm in his rusty Civic, the hazard lights blinking. "You need help with notes?" he stated, not a question. He started showing up after his shifts, balancing his laptop on his knees, sharing code snippets from the lectures. We debugged assignments together, trading energy drinks for concentration. The warehouse fired me the next week, citing company policy after injuries. The diner also cut my hours, claiming it was the slow season. Rent loomed over me. I hobbled to the financial aid office and begged for emergency funds. They offered a loan with interest. Aunt Eileen wired $300 from her savings, no questions asked. It bought groceries and bus fare. Logan proposed the idea over late-night pizza in the dorm lounge. "We're both drowning in med supply data from that warehouse," he said, wiping sauce from his chin. "Hospitals lose track of inventory during surges. What if we build software to predict shortages?" He sketched flowcharts on napkins, machine learning models trained on shipment logs. I stared at the diagrams. My ankle throbbed in the boot, but the numbers clicked into place in my mind. We had access to public data sets from the CDC, plus anonymized records I had copied before getting canned from the warehouse. Drew, a senior in bioinformatics, joined the team after overhearing us in the computer lab. He brought expertise in neural networks, a quiet intensity that balanced out Logan's boundless energy. We coded in the engineering building's basement, the fluorescent hum replaced by the whir of server fans we had salvaged from surplus sales. The prototype ran on my old laptop, now working in tandem with Logan's desktop and Drew's gaming rig. It scraped order histories and flagged low stock on critical items, like PPE. Accuracy hit 85% on test data. Investor demos started small, pitches to professors, then local health startups. We incorporated as BioPredict AI and filed for a patent on the algorithm. A seed round came from an angel investor who had lost a cousin due to supply delays during an outbreak. The check cleared 6 figures. We rented a cramped office above a vape shop, whiteboards covering every available wall. Logan handled ops. Drew refined the models and led development. Crutches gave way to a walking boot. Then finally, sneakers. The fracture healed crooked but strong. We launched the beta version with 3 hospital partners, dashboards alerting procurement teams in real time. Revenue trickled in from subscriptions. Mom called me once, collect from Kansas City. Travis had signed a minor league deal, she announced, her voice sounding strangely tiny. "You should congratulate him." I just let the call ring through to voicemail. Aunt Eileen texted me congratulations on the launch, adding a coffee emoji for good measure. The platform scaled fast. We hired 2 interns and upgraded the servers to the cloud. BioPredict AI became the backbone for regional health networks, predicting surges before they even hit the news. My name appeared on the cap table, equity that grew with every contract signed. Logan high-fived me after our first big renewal. From warehouse floor to this. He laughed, gesturing at the organized chaos of the office. Drew just nodded, already typing away at the next update. The accident had faded to a scar under my sock, a constant reminder that sometimes, falling points you in the right direction. An email from TechCrunch landed in my inbox on a Tuesday morning, the subject line screaming 30 under 30. You made the list! I clicked the link from my office desk, the coffee beside my keyboard growing cold. The article profiled BioPredict AI as the tool that was saving hospitals millions in wasted inventory. My photo, taken at a conference, blazer over jeans, sat next to Logan's and Drew's. The writer called us. The trio transformed data into lives saved, and the recognition was explosive. My LinkedIn notifications were relentless. Investors flooded my DMs, and conference invitations piled up. We flew to San Francisco for the awards ceremony. Gala rented tuxedos and a stunning gown from a boutique on Fillmore Street. On stage, the host read our bios while spotlights scanned the audience. I held the glass trophy tightly, looked at my team, and kept my acceptance speech brief. Cameras flashed. Someone even shouted something about acquisition rumors. Back in Charlotte, our platform was handling real crises. When a hurricane knocked out power grids across the Carolinas, our system rerouted crucial drug shipments from warehouses that were still functional, effectively preventing shortages in ICUs. Hospital administrators sent us thank you emails filled with heartfelt patient stories. Grandmothers receiving their chemotherapy on schedule. Kids getting their insulin without any delays. Our revenue soared to 7 figures from enterprise licenses. 6 months later, a major pharmaceutical giant reached out. Their VP flew in on a private jet to our humble office, ran numbers on a whiteboard. The offer came over steaks at a rooftop restaurant, an 8-figure buyout with stock options and retention bonuses. Logan negotiated fiercely for employee equity. Drew crunched valuation. The trio's work transformed data into lives saved, and the recognition was overwhelming. My LinkedIn was constantly buzzing with notifications. Investors were sending direct messages, and invitations to conferences were piling up. We flew to San Francisco for the awards ceremony. Gala rented tuxedos and a gown from a boutique on Fillmore Street. On stage, the host read our bios, while spotlights moved across the audience. I held the glass trophy tightly, stood beside my team, and kept my speech brief. Cameras flashed, and someone yelled something about acquisition rumors. Back in Charlotte, the platform was handling real crises. When a hurricane knocked out power grids in the Carolinas, our system rerouted drug shipments from unaffected warehouses, preventing shortages in intensive care units. Hospital administrators sent thank you emails with patient stories. Grandmothers receiving chemotherapy on time and kids getting insulin without delay. Revenue soared into the 7 figures from enterprise licenses. A big pharma company approached us 6 months later. Their VP flew in on a private jet to our office. We ran numbers on a whiteboard. The offer came over steak at a rooftop restaurant, an 8-figure buyout, stock options, and retention bonuses. Logan negotiated hard for employee equity. Drew worked on valuation models until 3 a.m. I signed a term sheet at dawn, pen steady. The deal closed in a downtown conference room with lawyers shuffling documents thicker than textbooks. Wire transfers hit our accounts that same week. I paid off student loans that never existed and wired Aunt Eileen enough for a new car. She replied with a photo from the dealership lot with the caption, "No more Honda leaks." I went house hunting on weekends, driving past cookie-cutter suburbs until Lake Norman appeared, its blue water sparkling beneath pine trees. The realtor showed me a modern villa on a quiet cove with floor-to-ceiling windows and a dock jetting into the lake, a kitchen big enough for a restaurant. I walked through the empty great room, my heels echoing on the hardwood floor, and imagined gatherings without scoreboards. Closing took 30 days. I moved in with boxes labeled in Sharpie, the laptop that started it all sitting on the counter. The dining area got a custom table, solid oak, 10 feet long, with seats for 10, no high chair, no assigned spots. I sanded the surface myself one weekend, the stains smelling sharp in the open air. Logan helped me carry the benches, sweat dripping as we leveled the legs. "This is the upgrade," he said, slapping the wood. Drew arrived later with housewarming beer and set up a smart hub that controlled the lights and music from an app. We christened the table with takeout barbecue, the sauce staining the grain, laughter bouncing off the vaulted ceilings. The acquisition team kept us on as consultants. I flew to board meetings in New York, presented quarterly forecasts, and watched the platform integrate into national networks. Press releases announced BioPredict powering 80% of Southeast hospitals. My equity vested in chunks large enough to fund side projects without begging VCs. Neighbors started trickling over for lake parties. Raphael, the single dad next door, brought his daughter and a cooler of sodas. We grilled steaks on the dock while the kids jumped into the summer water. Dr. Khan, my old algorithms professor, drove down for a weekend retreat and marveled at the view from the deck. "You built more than code," he said, clinking glasses. I hosted coding boot camps in the basement media room, a projector beaming tutorials on the wall. Local teens learned Python over pizza, their eyes wide at the server rack humming in the corner. One kid fixed a bug in our open-source repository. His pull request merged live. I framed the commit message above the fireplace. The table saw its first Thanksgiving without family drama. Logan carved the turkey, and Drew mixed cocktails with too much lime. Raphael's daughter set the places, napkins folded into swans. We ate until we were stuffed, dishes piled in the sink, the lake lapping outside the windows. No one checked scores or scouting reports. Acquisition perks included a company car. I picked a hybrid SUV and parked it in the 3-car garage. Mornings started with coffee on the dock, my laptop open to market dashboards. The buyout money sat in index funds, growing quietly. I donated matching amounts to STEM scholarships at UNC Charlotte, anonymously. At first, TechCrunch followed up with a "Where are they now?" piece. The photographer shot me at the table, sunlight streaming through the glass. The article quoted me, "Success isn't a trophy, it's space for the people who choose you." Shares skyrocketed. My net worth crossed commas I never imagined. The villa became headquarters for chosen traditions. Sunday brunches with mimosas and game nights where Drew always won at cards. Raphael taught us to fish off the dock, catch and release, photos only. Dr. Khan brought guest lecturers, debates raging until midnight. The table held up it all. Spills, arguments, toasts. I walked the property at dusk one evening, the water still as glass. The oak table was visible through the windows, empty but waiting. 900 miles from Kansas City. Zero regrets. The buyout funded freedom. The lake house built the family I designed. 6 years later, an invitation to Mom's 60th birthday arrived in the mail, heavy cardstock with gold foil lettering. The envelope listed my old Kansas City address, crossed out, with my new one printed on a neat label. I turned it over twice, tracing the return sticker with my thumb. Curiosity 1. I booked a nonstop flight, packed light, and landed Friday evening. The rental car smelled like pine freshener. I drove the familiar route past the high school fields where Travis once practiced. The diner where I'd wipe tables. The red brick house looked smaller, the paint at the corner peeling, the driveway cracked deeper. Balloons bobbed from the mailbox, music thumping from the backyard. I parked down the block and walked up in jeans and a blazer. Guests milled on the patio. Neighbors, old coaches, relatives I barely recognized. Dad spotted me first near the grill, spatula in hand. "Avery," he said, his voice flat. He gave me a quick hug, smelling like charcoal. Mom appeared in the doorway, an apron over her dress, her eyes narrowing. "You came," she stated, wiping her hands on a towel. No smile. Travis lumbered over, a beer gut straining his shirt, his handshake limp. "Hey sis, heard you're some tech hotshot now." He clapped my shoulder too hard. The party swirled with cake cutting and speeches about Mom's community service. I stood at the edge, sipping water. Mom raised her glass from the steps. "To family," she toasted, her gaze locking on me. "Some kids you wish you didn't have to see every day, but blood keeps you stuck." Laughter erupted. Travis snorted. Dad stared at the grass. The words hit me like deja vu, sharper this time. I set my cup down and walked straight to her. "Your wish came true years ago. I live in Charlotte permanently." Mom's face hardened. "Don't make a scene at my party." "No scene," I replied. "Just facts." I turned and threaded through the crowd. Someone whispered. Travis called after me about respect. I kept walking, keys already in hand. The drive to the airport blurred, highway lights streaking, radio off. I boarded the red-eye, the seatbelt clicked before takeoff. My phone buzzed as the wheels lifted. Mom's number. "Call me, we need to talk." I blocked it mid-air, the screen going dark. Back in Charlotte by dawn, I deleted the contact and cleared the thread. No more notifications from that area code. The villa waited, quiet, the lake shimmering outside the windows. I brewed coffee, sat on the dock, and watched the sun climb. 6 years of silence confirmed. Dad emailed once, forwarded from an old account. Your mother's upset. Travis lost his sponsorship. I archived it unread. Aunt Eileen texted a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else. The party faded like a bad dream. Work resumed. Monday calls, product roadmaps. Colleagues asked about the trip. I shrugged. Family obligation done. No details. The fracture from long ago ached in the cold weather. This felt cleaner. I changed my emergency contact to Logan and updated beneficiary forms. Legal zoomed the documents. No questions. The past stayed in Kansas City, buried under balloon strings and cake crumbs. One evening, Raphael grilled fish next door. He waved me over. You okay? He asked, flipping fillets. I nodded and accepted a plate. We ate on his patio, kids chasing fireflies. Simple, chosen. The blocked number tried from a new line weeks later. Travis's voicemail slurred, apologies, money needed for lawyer fees. I deleted it without listening, emptied the trash. Permanent. Mom's birthday photos surfaced on a cousin's social media. Smiles. No mention of the walkout. I scrolled past, unfollowed the feed. Distance wasn't miles anymore. It was settings. I flew business class to conferences, spoke on panels about AI ethics. Reporters asked about origins. I mentioned the scholarship and skipped the rest. The story stayed mine to shape. Aunt Eileen visited once, drove the lake loop in her new sedan. Proud doesn't cover it, she said over dinner. We toasted with sparkling water. She left with leftovers. No backward glance. The invitation went into a drawer, then the shredder. Paper confetti for a garden bed, roots in new soil. Kansas City became a dot on weather apps, checked for flights. Nothing more. Charlotte's humidity wrapped familiar now, mornings crisp off the water. I ran the dock path at sunrise, earbuds in, playlist loud. 1 year marker. No cards, no calls. Silence golden. I hosted a team retreat at the villa, strategy sessions around the oak table. Whiteboards on easels. Drew sketched roadmaps. Logan ordered catering. Productive. Peaceful. The lap against the dock echoed only in memory. Faded like old code. I overwrote it line by line. New commits. Clean builds. Charlotte was home. The following Christmas, that year opened, the villa doors were wide. String lights twinkled along the dock. Pine scent drifting from the tree in the great room. I'd sent invitations weeks earlier, simple cards with lake coordinates. Guests arrived with covered dishes and wrapped gifts, tires crunching on the gravel drive. Aunt Eileen pulled in first, her trunk loaded with bakery boxes from her favorite Charlotte bakery. She hugged me at the threshold, her coat dusted with light snow from the mountains. Drew followed in his electric sedan, carrying a crate of craft beer. Raphael and his daughter bounded up the steps, arms full of homemade tamales. Dr. Khan arrived last, scarf knotted neatly, bearing a tin of spiced nuts. We gathered around the oak table, all 10 seats filled. Candles flickered in glass holders, plates piled high with turkey, stuffing, and Eileen's famous pecan pie. Laughter rose above the clinking silverware. Raphael's daughter passed the gravy. Drew poured refills. Dr. Khan shared stories from campus breakthroughs. No agendas, no scorekeeping. My phone vibrated mid-meal. Unknown number, Kansas City area code. I silenced it, but it rang again. I stepped into the kitchen and answered quietly. Mom's voice crackled through. Travis lost everything. Sponsorships gone. House foreclosed. Lawsuits piling up. He needs help. I glanced at the table. Eileen slicing pie. Drew snapping photos. Raphael teaching the kid a card trick. Tell him to call a lawyer, I said. He's family. Mom pressed. You have money now. This table has no room for anyone who pushed me out. I ended the call, blocked the number, powered off the phone, and returned to my seat. Drew raised an eyebrow. I shook my head once. Conversation flowed on. Dessert shifted to announcements. I stood, glass in hand. One more thing, I explained. The Avery Lane Foundation, seed money from acquisition residuals, focused on full-ride scholarships for low-income STEM students. facing family resistance. Applications open in January. Mentorship built in. Dr. Khan offered to chair the board. Eileen wiped a tear and nodded firmly. We toasted the fund, glasses chiming. Raphael's daughter asked if she could apply someday. Absolutely, I replied. The table erupted in plans. Fundraisers, coding camps, alumni networks. Energy buzzed like startup days. Later, we bundled up for Doc Fireworks, a small show I'd hired. Bursts reflecting on the water. Kids oohed and ahed. Adults snapped pics. Dr. Khan pulled me aside. "This is legacy," he said quietly. I smiled and watched colors explode overhead. Cleanup was communal. Drew on dishes, Raphael wrapping leftovers, Eileen labeling containers. The tree lights glowed soft as the last guest left. I locked the door and stood alone in the quiet. The table cleared, chairs pushed in, the lake lapping outside. The foundation launched publicly in the spring. The press release hit local news and applications flooded in. The first recipient, a girl from rural Missouri whose parents wanted her married at 18. She coded her way out, just like I did. I met her at orientation and handed her the check personally. Mom tried once more, a letter forwarded from an old address, pleading for Travis's rehab costs. I marked return to sender and dropped it in the mailbox. No reply needed. Aunt Eileen moved closer, bought a condo 10 minutes away. Sunday dinners became routine, her recipes, my grill. Drew and Raphael joined often, kids growing fast. Dr. Khan retired and consulted for fun, pro bono. The table hosted milestones, grant awards, birthdays, quiet Tuesdays with takeout. Seats rotated, but the core stayed. No empty spots for guilt. Years on, the foundation funded dozens. Graduates sent updates. Patents filed. Companies started. I framed their emails above the fireplace, next to the TechCrunch trophy. One quiet Christmas Eve, I sat alone at the table, coffee steaming. Phone silent, lake frozen at the edges. Family wasn't blood. It was the people who showed up, stayed, chose back. I'd built that, complete, cut from the old roots, deep in the new. The lesson crystallized. Real family is the table you set, the doors you open, the hands you hold without obligation. Charlotte forever chosen.